Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Last week, the Republican-led Wisconsin legislature, backed by conservative majority courts, forced the state to hold an election in the middle of a national health emergency, a pandemic. Joe Biden ended up winning the state over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary, but it's the result of another race that is most notable. Liberal challenger Jill Karofsky defeated Republican incumbent Daniel Kelly for a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Despite President Trump's endorsement of Kelly with 90% of the returns counted, Karofsky led Kelly by more than 100,000 votes and about 7 percentage points. The result narrows to a 4-3, the conservative majority on the nonpartisan Wisconsin Supreme Court, with the next seat up for election in 2023. The court is expected soon to decide a case that seeks to purge more than 200,000 people from Wisconsin's voter rolls. The Republican Party of Wisconsin issued a statement yesterday saying they are disappointed in Kelly's loss and accused Democrats of attempting to rig the election in their favor.
I'm sorry. John Heilman.
Are you serious?
John, I mean, you know.
On Wisconsin. All right. Yay. So that was so awesome. You know, voting in a pandemic, so Wisconsinites were asked to be martyrs, and now they're heroes. Congratulations. That was amazing. It really, it means a lot to people that, you know, that you were willing to be martyrs, but that you ended up being heroes. It is the light at the beginning of our tunnel is what that is. So, you know, listen, the GOP is sitting there saying, we didn't get what we wanted, but at least we did the wrong thing. How's voter suppression working for you now, GOP? And it's important who sits on this guy, Dan Kelly. Remember, this was why Donald Trump said that Governor Evers tried to cancel the election, because Donald Trump said, so I endorsed this Dan Kelly guy, excellent guy, don't know him. You know, and he said, so that was the reason why Wisconsin was going to, you know, postpone the election. It had nothing to do with the fact that it's the middle of a freaking pandemic and we don't have enough tests out there to figure out who does and who does not have coronavirus, COVID-19. I mean, it's just amazing. So the best sign that we saw is the sign that was tweeted by an intern, a student journalist, who tweeted out a whole line of people in Wisconsin with one person at the front wearing a mask, obviously, social distancing, obviously, with a sign that said, "This is ridiculous, but you won. So thank you for risking your life for the very essence of our democracy." Because it's important, because Wisconsin's, this Dan Kelly dude was appointed by Scott Walker. It's like Voldemort, the name you just should never say. That's how evil that was. Recalled, voted back. I mean, just what an amazing, you know, you thought he was the worst politician in the history of politicians until you met this guy yesterday. What is wrong with our president? I mean, listen, I think that, you know, obviously we will get through a pandemic just like we get through everything. We got through Spanish flu, we got through Ebola, we got through H1N1, we got through Zika, we got through things. And this is a freaking frightening one, because people who have no symptoms could be passing it one amongst the other. You know, I mean, everything about this is creepy. There's no vaccine. Obviously, it's 10 times more deadly than regular flu. It is contagious, much more so than regular flu. Regular flu lasts for 3 days. This is a very long illness with lots and lots and lots and lots of days of extreme fever. It attacks the lungs. People are going from walking into the ER to an hour later being on a ventilator. I mean, this is just stuff that horror movies are made of. But whatever this sickness is, we will get over it. But I just don't think Donald Trump will ever get over whatever is wrong with him. I think he will die this way. You know, yesterday, every time you see him, you think it can't get any worse. And then it does, and then it does. Yesterday was the sickest. He is unable to care about others. He is unable to execute the duties of his office, which is to protect and defend the Americans from any enemy, foreign or domestic. He is inept, and he is so completely in his head that people could die right in front of him, and he would wonder how this affects him. I have seen people tweeting out that Joe Biden could kill Donald Trump on Fifth Avenue and they would still vote for him. I mean, I hope that this is, this Wisconsin victory. I hope that this is, the since 2018, the big blue wave. I just hope that this is the continuation of the big blue wave, because it felt yesterday like somebody in this administration has got to stand up and say to this man, and if you didn't see it, I'm going to play you little clips of it because it was ridiculously off the hook. Jessica says I used that phrase wrong, and I probably do. Do I, Brett? It's okay? He doesn't care. She's just sitting behind the glass going, please don't breathe on me. Just, please.
Randy, I'm no longer the authority on what's hip.
Oh, when did that happen? Is she? You grew up together.
No comment. No comment.
Right. So why is she criticizing? I don't know. She says I used that expression completely wrong. She said off the hook means great. And I mean it like unchained. I mean it like unhinged. I mean like this man is certifiable is what I'm trying to say. 25th Amendment territory, yes, in a normal universe. You know that there was this big article in, I think it was the New Yorker, about Mitch McConnell being this enabler of Donald Trump, and how behind closed doors Mitch McConnell says things out loud to others like he's crazy. No one trusts him. We don't even know if he's sane. And yet they keep propping this man up with their silence. They never speak up. Everyone's waiting for this Joseph Welch moment where somebody finally stands up and says, after long last, sir, have you no sense of decency? Speaking of Wisconsin, that was your senator, Joe McCarthy, who created, almost a hunting of people in this country until Joseph Welch, a senator, actually said, at long last, have you no sense of decency left, sir? Now, the natural person to do that would be Mike Pence, but Mike Pence can't get his face out of Donald Trump's butt long enough to say anything that's even remotely connected to decency, or at long last, can we just say the emperor has no clothes? I'm gonna just play you a little clip, just a little bit. I think this one's too long for what we have left in the segment. Yeah, it is. I'm going to play you, I'll bump back with it then. The first thing that happened last night, if you missed this, first of all, this went on for 2.5 hours. For 2.5 hours. And the president first put Dr. Anthony Fauci out front to take back his words, take down his words, because he was on the Sunday shows with Jake Tapper and said, yes, if we had started containment, meaning testing, earlier, mitigation, meaning staying home, wearing masks, wearing gloves, earlier, lives could have been saved. Well, that is just so obvious to anybody who understands that. Right? But he made Fauci go out there and genuflect and fall on his sword. That was the beginning.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, this is how it began yesterday.
I had an interview yesterday that I was asked a hypothetical question. And hypothetical questions sometimes can get you into some difficulty. The first and only time that Dr. Birx and I went in and formally made a recommendation to the president to actually have a, quote, shutdown in the sense of not really shutdown, but to really have strong mitigation. We discussed it. Obviously, there would be concern by some that, in fact, that might have some negative consequences. Nonetheless, the president listened to the recommendation and went to the mitigation.
I issued travel restrictions on that date, even though nobody died, and I got brutalized over it by the press. Today I walk in, I hear I'm going to fire him. I'm not firing him. I think he's a wonderful guy.
Tweet something that said fire Fauci. Why did you
fire Fauci?
I retweeted somebody. I don't know. They said fire. Doesn't matter.
Did you notice that when you retweeted it?
Yeah, I notice everything.
Okay, and then he played a propaganda tape. I swear to God, he played a propaganda tape of Fox News clips, seriously, praising him. Fox News clips, the odd doctor who appeared on a morning show who disagreed that coronavirus was going to be a serious thing. And then he played his response to the coronavirus, except he skipped over the entire month of February. Now, in February, you remember Donald Trump in February was saying, we got it under control. It's one guy. Then it was 15 people. They're getting better. There's nothing here, nothing to see here. And then even through March, he didn't declare a national emergency until March 13th. And then on that day, he lied, and he said that we would have millions and millions of tests by the end of the week, and that anybody who wanted one could have one. He also said at the end of March that you would have home testing. He said by the end of March, people would have 15-minute tests and all. Everything he said turned out to be untrue. But in February, he was still downplaying, denying, getting Fox News to deny and downplay, telling their audience there's no there there, there's nothing to fear, go out, wherever you are, don't worry about it. And then, I'll play you his propaganda tape. This is really freaking painful, but this was his propaganda video that he showed, after Fauci genuflected and said, well, we went straight to mitigation. Now, that's true. But what Fauci couldn't say is we never tried containment. Because Donald Trump is a clown. And because Donald Trump didn't want to test people. Because Donald Trump, A, didn't have tests for COVID. B, when he did, they were flawed. Remember that? Remember that? The CDC had to create a special test for a special new pandemic virus. And they tried and they failed. It was flawed. And it took them 3 weeks to figure it out. Meanwhile, you had state labs, clinical labs, you had private labs, all begging the federal government to waive the rule that said that they could develop their own test. And the federal government wouldn't waive the rule. They wouldn't give them permission. We did a whole show about it. About how everybody was begging them, let us do our own test, let us do our own test. They skipped the whole containment portion that would have kept us from having to sacrifice our livelihoods and our lives as we knew them if we would have done containment. But we didn't. So he shows this propaganda tape yesterday that goes from him declaring, he's closing travel to China. He never closed travel to China. 430,000 people have traveled from China to the United States since coronavirus surfaced and Donald Trump said no travel. It's a lie. And we've taken calls from people who came from Beijing, right? We've taken calls from people who came from all over. People came from Wuhan and said that when they got to the American side of the immigration portion of their trip, They just asked him questions. Nobody took their temperature. Nobody seemed interested at all. Now, no American citizen was banned from coming from Wuhan or from coming from Beijing or from coming from anywhere in China to the United States. Not one single American citizen was blocked, banned, or screened even. So that in and of itself is a lie about, I acted early. By the way, on that day, which was New Year's Eve, that he said, I'm banning all travel from China, which was a lie, 62 other countries had earlier that day banned Chinese citizens from entering their countries. 62 others. So this whole BS about how everybody, criticized him and called him this and called him, it's just a lie. And then in his propaganda tape on March 12th, not February, March 12th, that was the day he said he was doing a European travel ban. March 12th. Except the UK was excluded, Ireland was excluded, Croatia, Cyprus, Bulgaria, and Romania. No problem. Come on in. And the same stories, people traveling here. Nobody checked their temperature. They weren't screened at immigration coming into this country. Not at all. So he puts up this propaganda tape yesterday, and this is when the networks cut away, okay? I'll tell MSNBC, because I was going back and forth going, what are people going to do about this? Because, he did one on Friday early during our airtime, and I refused. I just said, I'm not carrying it. So what's going on is, CNN and MSNBC, they're waiting for the experts. But he started this with Fauci, genuflecting to him, but still telling the truth because he left out, well, we didn't try containment. He left that out. And then he showed this propaganda tape, and I got to tell you, this was crazy because CNN just dumped out of it because they realized that this was a campaign rally. This had nothing to do with the health of the American people. It had nothing to do with the fact that people are sitting on lines for food banks for miles of people in cars at food banks in this here country waiting online for food. It had nothing to do with the checks going out or not going out or Social Security recipients, who's going to get it, who needs to fill out an application. It had nothing to do with Smithfield Farms. It had nothing to do with, unemployment at 16 million. We're going to get another report this week. It's going to be over 20 million. You watch. Had nothing to do with anything that any American who is suffering through this needs to hear from the president. No. Instead, this is what he decided to do.
People should be more concerned right now with the flu in this country.
A lot of people are concerned about the coronavirus because they're hearing a lot of news about it right now. But the reality is, comparing it to the flu, for example, it's not even close to being at that stage.
What if it is worse? Is this a moment where maybe countries put politics aside, a little bit of pride aside, and do we have U.S. officials? Should U.S. professionals such as yourself get involved?
How worried should Americans be about coronavirus?
Coronavirus is not going to cause a major issue in the United States.
Okay, so what he shows are a few clips from Fox News and a couple of doctors who got it completely wrong. That was his evidence that he somehow cared about coronavirus. I didn't even understand it.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Okay, so he played like 3 or 4 clips of Fox News, right? And then Dr. Anthony Fauci was actually talking to Sean Hannity in one of those clips and asked him something about COVID. And they cut off Dr. Fauci's answer, but this was proof to the Cult 45. This was proof to the maggots. Trump is standing up to the media. I didn't even understand it. All right. And then they played Trump's decisive action after 35 seconds of Fox News clips. Dan Scavino in the White House literally put this thing together and played this. January January, China.
Well, we've asked them to accelerate whatever they're doing in terms of a vaccine.
March.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Medicare patients can now visit any doctor by phone or video conference at no additional cost.
The first 1 million masks will be available immediately.
That was, and people were like, yeah, Trump giving it to the media. Give it 1 million masks. We need 1 billion. We need 1 billion masks. Okay. And everybody knows that since all these things that he said were false, okay, we did not ban travel from China. 480,000 people have come from China since the ban. We know that March 12th was the day that he did a ban that exempted the UK and Ireland and, some other countries. Romania's exempted. Don't ask me. Bulgaria's exempted. So that was, and people were like, yeah. Except that real reporters understood that he had skipped the entire month of February. Paula Reed, who is the White House correspondent for CBS News, was just livid with this propaganda thing. The chyron on CNN was unbelievable. I mean, really. Whoever was writing the chyron yesterday must have somebody in their family who's sick or died, because they were like, turned it into a propaganda fest. This is all lies. The president is off the hook. The president's off the rails. The president is me. It's all about him. It's all about him. Paula Reed from CBS had the same freaking reaction. She asked him about the month of February that was left out. He went from January, 31st to March.
The argument is that you bought yourself some time and you didn't use it to prepare hospitals. You didn't use it to ramp up testing. Right now,
you're so disgraceful. It's so disgraceful the way you said it. Let me just listen. I just went over it.
Or this rant supposed to make people
I just went over it
in an unprecedented crisis.
Nobody thought we should do it, and when I did it.
But what did you do with the time that you bought?
You know
the
we
month
did.
Of February. That
we did.
Was a gap.
What do you do?
Month of February.
What do you do when you have no case in the whole United States?
You had cases
when
in February.
Excuse me, you reported it. 0 cases, 0 deaths on January 17th.
February, the entire
January.
Month of
I said in January.
Your video has a complete gap.
On January 30th.
What did your administration do in February with the time that your travel ban bought
A
you?
lot. A lot. And in fact, we'll give you a list. What we did, in fact, part of it was up there. We did a lot. Look. You know you're a fake. You know that. Your whole network, the way you cover it, is fake. And most of you, and not all of you, but the people are wise to you. That's why you have a lower approval rating than you've ever had before, times probably 3. And when you ask me that question, let me ask you this: why did Biden apologize? Why did he write a letter of apology? No, that's very important. Why did the Democrats think that I acted too quickly? You know why? Because they really thought that I acted too quickly. We have done a great job. Now, I could have kept it open. And I could have done what some countries are doing. They're getting beat up pretty badly. I could have kept it open. I thought of keeping it open.
62 countries had closed to Chinese travelers before the United States did. And she's talking about something else, though. She's talking about the entire month of February. I told you New Year's Eve is the day that Donald Trump said he was banning travel from China, which was a lie. Okay, like I said, almost 500,000 people have come in from China since then. So that in and of itself is a lie. But she wasn't even, she said, but you just showed us a propaganda video. There's a gap in it. There's a gap, the month of February. So you closed it in January, the end of January. What did you do with the time that you bought? What did you increase testing? Did you try for containment? Did you do anything in the month of February? Now, Donald Trump was traveling in February. Donald Trump was going to his golf clubs, and Donald Trump went to India. Donald Trump went all over the place. Donald Trump did nothing in February, absolutely nothing, except downplay and deny that we had any problems.
Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. You may ask about the coronavirus, which is
very well under control in our country.
We have it so well under control. I mean, we really have done a very good job.
So that's what he was saying. Day after day after day, week after week after week.
Right. And those are dated, as you can see, in the top right-hand corner, okay? February 10th, February 25th, February 26th, okay? And it went on through the entire month of February.
I don't believe the president has ever belittled the threat of the coronavirus.
Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control.
We think we have it very well under control. We pretty much shut it down.
A lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat. We're in very good shape.
I think it's going to work out fine.
Very well under control in our country.
Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. I mean, view this the same as the flu. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
We are working on cures, and we're getting some very good results.
We only have 15 people, and they're getting better.
Now the Democrats are
Politicizing the coronavirus.
and this is their new hoax.
If you're healthy, probably go through a process and you'll be fine. You take a solid flu vaccine, you don't think that would have an impact or much of an impact on corona?
No.
That was the entire month of February into the last clip was March 2nd. Okay, that was the entire month of February, February 10th, February 15th, February 17th, the 26th, 27th, 28th. He called it a hoax at a rally in South Carolina. And when they showed this propaganda, they left out the whole month of February. And he literally trashed a reporter for noticing that the whole month of February was left out of his own propaganda video. You're disgusting. This is what he did to Jonathan Karl, too. You'll never make it. What? You'll never make it. We did great. We did everything right. If you did everything right, why were you saying just a couple of days ago that you take no responsibility? If you did it all right, you'd want to put your name on it, wouldn't you? He blamed Obama last night. He blamed everybody but himself. And then he downshifted into autocracy. He actually said that he has total power in this country. Doesn't matter what the governors want to do with their states. Doesn't matter if they're protecting their own people. He has total power. That is not true, but that's what he said.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all because we were given a set of circumstances and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time. Wasn't meant for this kind of an event with the kind of numbers that we're talking about. I mean, this is when somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total. And that's the way it's got to be.
Total. The authority is total.
It's total. It's total.
Total. Now, you would think that a man who said he doesn't take any responsibility and is now saying that he has total responsibility would somehow be called out. And that somewhere along the line, his cabinet members would say, okay, he's insane. And America is literally in danger, and we have to speak up and we have to say something, and we've got to invoke the 25th Amendment. But after yesterday, I mean, one can only hope. This was really, really twisted, okay? Yesterday, he kept on saying for this whole 2.5 hours after he played 35 seconds of clips from Fox News and then showed his, robust response, which left out the entire month of February, right? Because February, he was, busy downplaying it. He was busy dismissing it. He was busy traveling to India, and he was very busy golfing, very busy. So all of a sudden last night, he starts saying, I am the only one who could fix it. It's me alone. I have total power. I am the king. I am very powerful. The president of the United States has the authority to do anything he wants, which is very powerful. but he claims no responsibility. You know, it's hard to argue with it because it makes no sense.
For instance, if a governor issued a stay-at-home order...
When you say my authority, the president's authority, not mine, because it's not me. This is when somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total. And that's the way it's got to be.
Your authority is total.
It's total. It's total. And the governors know that.
So if a
the governors know that. Now you have a couple of bands of excuse me. You have a couple.
Could you rescind that order?
You have a couple of bands of Democrat governors, but they will agree to it. They will agree to it. But the authority of the President of the United States having to do with the subject we're talking about is total.
States that have closed, ordered schools closed. It's been states that have ordered businesses like restaurants.
That's because
and
I let
bars
that
closed.
happen. Because I would have preferred that.
Oh my
I
God.
let that happen. But if I wanted to, I could have closed it up. But I let that happen. And I like the way they've done it.
You're prepared then to big one states and say, I order you to open your schools, I order you to force kids to be able to go?
Yes, Mr. President. Following up on that, there are two consortiums of states today, California, Oregon, Washington on the West Coast, northeastern states, totally representing about 100 million people, who said they're going to cooperate and decide when to reopen.
Well, they can decide, but...
Does that undermine what you're trying to
No,
do?
not at all. Let me just tell you, very simple. I'm going to put it very simply. The President of the United States has the authority to do what the President has the authority to do, which is very powerful. The President of the United States calls the shots. If we weren't here for the states, you would have had a problem in this country like you've never seen before. We were here to back them up, and we've more than backed them up. We did a job that nobody ever thought was possible. It's a decision for the President of the United States. Now, with that being said, we're going to work with the states because it's very important. You have local governments. They're pinpointed. It's really, you talk about, it's like a microchip. They're pinpointed. We have local government that hopefully will do a good job. And if they don't do a good job, I'd step in so fast. But no, they can't do anything without the approval of the President of the United States.
What?
Go ahead, please.
So if some states refuse to reopen and you order them to, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says all powers that don't reside in the President or the Congress reside in the states. How do you overcome that?
Well, if some states refuse to open, I would like to see that person run for election.
What is he talking about? The 10th Amendment of the United States gives all of the powers not enumerated in the Constitution to the states, and the states can decide whether or not to open or close schools, how to protect people in the case of a pandemic, to order, the National Guard, whatever. I mean, but he's literally drunk with power now because there is a national emergency. Now, he's declared many national emergencies, none of which were national emergencies, like the border wall, right? But the president sees an opportunity now to take all the power away from the states and keep it for himself. And this is why it's time for any decent America, especially the GOP. Oh, they believe in federalism, power to the states, to remove him. That was the scariest freaking press conference I ever saw in my life. And the reporters asked him, where are you getting this information? What are you talking about? You just said, where did you hear that the president can do whatever he wants?
You said when someone is president of the United States, their authority is total. That is not true.
Okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to write up papers on this. It's not going to be necessary because the governors need us one way or the other because ultimately it comes with the federal government. That being said, we're getting along very well with the governors, and I feel very certain that there won't be a problem.
He is literally threatening the governors to withhold test kits. He's threatening the governors to withhold ventilators, masks, all this PPE and all of these test kits that he has commandeered. Remember, this came yesterday. Before yesterday, we had been hearing from Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. She was the first one out the door to say, they're stealing our stuff. We're putting it there. The president told us we were on our own, right? That we were states and we had to fend for ourselves because he was not responsible for a response to a pandemic. And he told the governors, you better get busy, you better get your own stuff. And so we went out there and we started shopping for our own stuff. And she said that she had to call Beijing. She said she had to call all over the place, right? They were calling hair salons, for God's nail salons, rather. They were calling, automobile shops because they wear masks. They were looking everywhere and anywhere. And they would place an order, and they would pay for that order after bidding against other states and the federal government. And then all of a sudden, Trump would swoop in and outbid FEMA and outbid the states and outbid and take their stuff. And we heard that from we heard that from Governor Pritzker in Illinois. We heard that from Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. We heard it from Governor Cuomo in New York. We heard it from Gavin Newsom. We heard it from a lot of governors that they were forced to buy stuff like they were on eBay in an auction situation, and only to be outbid by the federal government, who then would either buy the stuff or they would pay for the stuff, and the federal government would use their powers to commandeer their stuff. And now we find out, if you read the newspaper, that there is a 20-40-40 split of these items. 20% of the items go to replenish the stockpile that Donald Trump wiped out when he was exporting this stuff to China. It's another thing he was doing during February. He was selling the stockpile to foreign countries. That's what Katie Porter of California was able to find out, that our exports of PPE and other such things, ventilators, were going up exponentially. 1,065% of our stuff was being sold to foreign countries. Now he needs to replenish, so he's taking the orders from the states, and he's taking 20% of those goods and putting it in the federal stockpile. 20% or 40% are going to the states that ordered them, and 40% is going to private industry so that they can sell it to whoever they want at whatever price after they've driven the price up. It's because Jared Kushner needs $1 billion. Jared Kushner still needs $1 billion to get out from under 666 Fifth Avenue. And they are literally doing that. And that is why he's threatening the governors. You better be nice to me. I swear it's Talking Tina. You better be, my name is Talking Tina, and you better be nice to me or I'll kill your family. That's what that threat was. Those governors need me. They better be nice to me because I can take their stuff. You think the president isn't powerful enough to commandeer their stuff? You watch. I will commandeer their stuff. I will use the Defense Production Act not to force businesses to do anything for the American people that's of value, but to take the stuff the states found and paid for and hold it until they open their businesses, until they do what I tell them to do. I call the shots. And, you know, there's no point in telling Donald Trump he's wrong. The only thing to do is to what the governors are doing. They're literally banding together to form, apparently, a country. That is what's happening. You got the East Coast governors and the West Coast governors banding together to form nation states. Gavin Newsom's called California a nation state already.
Mary had a little lamb. The fourth. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
Hey! It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Has any governor agreed that you have the authority to decide when their state?
I haven't asked anybody because I don't. You know why? Because I don't have to. Go ahead, please.
But who told you the president has the total authority?
Enough, please.
Oh, he's so disgusting. That's Caitlin Collins from CNN. Who told you you have the authority over the states to tell them to open their schools or to open their businesses or that they can't close public, arenas? Who told you that? Enough. The man was so completely bizarre yesterday with his total power thing and his, I'm not responsible, but I have total control. He failed at the testing. There are so many reports out there about how he failed at testing. And now he's standing on a stage saying it doesn't matter. I have total control. And if governors want what I've been commandeering from them, if they want their stuff, they're going to have to kiss my ass. They're going to have to genuflect. They're going to have to do what Fauci did. And I swear to God, half of these people must be standing there saying, I got dressed up for this. I got dressed up to stand on a podium for 2 hours and listen to this clown lie. But they won't say anything. They won't say anything. And you really have to feel sorry for them in a weird way. At some point, Dr. Birx has to be saying, why am I even bothering with a pretty scarf? Why am I even doing this? It's draining. You know why it's draining? Because we're going down the drain. That's why it's draining you. We are sacrificing everything about our lives. Freedom of movement, freedom to work. Food shortages now. You got to pick a day, and hopefully there's toilet paper that day. And then the next day, obviously, the meat packing plants, they have people working shoulder to shoulder in these meat packing plants. And that Smithfield processing plant in Sioux Falls, that's thanks to Governor Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem would not shut down South Dakota. She still hasn't done it. And you know what? She gave a press conference herself yesterday. And you know what she was doing? She was on the stage yesterday touting hydroxychloroquine. That's going to save South Dakota. She gave a briefing yesterday to announce trials of hydroxychloroquine. It's an exciting day, she said. I spoke to Jared Kushner. These are some sick and twisted individuals. I want you to know that the largest single coronavirus cluster anywhere in the United States, with more than 300 workers, are at that pork processing plant in Sioux Falls. The mayor, his name's Paul Tenhaken, T-E-N capital H, I don't know, Tenhaken. He is the mayor of Sioux Falls. He's in the middle of this outbreak, and he said a shelter-in-place order is needed. Now it's needed today. He's a Republican, but Kristi Noem, the governor, refuses, and instead she's hyping hydroxychloroquine as some miracle drug, as if the Pony Express had to bring her the news all these many weeks later. Brazil just ended its trial of hydroxychloroquine. You know why? People were dying from it. The CIA, yes, our CIA, had a warning to the employees at the CIA not to buy hydroxychloroquine. This is what it said on their website. At this point, the drug is not recommended to be used by patients except medical professionals prescribing it as part of an ongoing investigational study. There are potentially significant side effects, including sudden cardiac death, associated with hydroxychloroquine, and its individual use in patients need to be carefully selected and monitored by a healthcare professional. And then in bold type, it said, please do not obtain this medication on your own.
But hydroxychloroquine, try it if you'd like.
He's a very sick man. He's a bad man. His sickness makes him bad. Some people's sickness makes them good. Better than most. His sickness makes him evil and bad. So you have 3,700 people working at Smithfield Foods production plant. 3,700 people working there. It turns out 18 million servings of pork per day. It's now closed down because yesterday alone, 57 more were confirmed to have positive diagnoses, and the total there is well over 300. Other clusters are the Cook County Jail in Chicago and the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier. And if you say anything, he'll tell you to shut up. Enough. Enough. I know what I alone can fix it. North Dakota has 868 cases. There's less than 1 million people there. South Florida, on the other hand, has 20,601 cases, which is twice what South Korea had, and South Korea has 30 more million people than Florida. Doing a great job, Rick DeSantis, doing a great job. These are the people that refuse to do anything about testing, containment, and mitigation. The mayor of Sioux Falls said May is not even remotely achievable for opening up the country. We're in the early innings of this in Sioux Falls, he said. The workers at Smithfield had been complaining that they were not given access to protective gear, they were not given masks. But the company's response was, well, we added extra hand sanitizing stations, and we continue to stress the importance of personal hygiene. But the workers said that they were required to work so closely together, it was impossible to stay healthy. A person who was afraid to give her name, she's a 30-year-old Mexican immigrant. She worked at the plant for 13 years, had to quit her job. She said there is no social distance. Many people are sick, not only in the plant, in the whole city. There are 200,000 people in Sioux Falls, and the best that they could do is a no lingering ordinance. The mayor has no power to enforce anything in the city, and he is trying to sound the alarm, and the psycho Republican governor, Kristi Noem, refuses to do anything to help anyone in her state. She's saying it's up to the individual. It's up to the individual. You know, we believe in, rugged individualism. The South Dakota State Medical Association wrote Kristi Noem a letter on the 3rd of April warning her, your state may soon face the challenges and hardships currently being seen in New York and other large cities across the country if a shelter-in-place order is not issued immediately. And this is going on in Iowa, too, Nebraska, and Arkansas. They refuse. Governor Asa Hutchinson, whose brother is I don't even want to go there. Let's just say I've seen him in very compromising positions. Drunk. A lot. He boasted about his very targeted response. And any stay-at-home order he would override. Governor Kim Reynolds in Iowa, keeping people at home takes a toll on their mental health. Well, we'd see more suicides and domestic abuse. But she prefers death, I guess. Kristi Noem has acknowledged that up to 70% of South Dakota might fall ill with COVID-19, but she says it's not up to the government to tell people how to behave. Are you freaking kidding me?
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
David, is the president's power total in this?
Clearly, it's not total. And as you pointed out earlier, he was very clear when he wanted to defend the 7 governors who are allies of his who didn't impose stay-at-home orders, that he didn't feel it was his role to tell them what to do, and that he studied the Constitution, and that's the conclusion that he drew. And as you point out, there's a great irony, because minutes before he said that, he said the governors chose not to get ventilators. They should have gotten ventilators. Basically, it was their responsibility to get ventilators, that they needed to take care of themselves in a global pandemic. And so, the mixed messages were kind of, even by Trumpian standards, it was really something today. And it was clear that he was very motivated to try and rebut. He was steamed up about what had been written about what hadn't been done.
in the New York Times. There was like, I told you yesterday, if you want the article, you can Google the New York Times, how Trump failed, but it's also in yesterday's homework, so you could go to randyrhodes.com, click on the homework, and look at yesterday's. That New York Times article is in there, and that thing was like 20 pages of all the mistakes and all of the errors and everything that Trump failed at, right?
As coronavirus was silently racing around the world in late January and early February, the federal government not only failed to use the massive arsenal of hundreds of laboratories across the United States for emergency testing, it actually left roadblocks in place to prevent non-government labs from assisting. That is according to documents obtained by CNN and interviews with more than a dozen scientists and physicians involved in coronavirus testing.
At the very beginning of this pandemic, it was the federal government that had the sole ability to do the testing and made it very difficult for private labs, for university labs to make their own tests based on certain regulatory hurdles.
Several hospital and university-based labs have told CNN they saw the pandemic approaching, were developing their own tests as early as January to detect the virus. But the red tape with the FDA's regulatory process prevented them from moving forward, meaning labs sat idle.
Rather than enlisting the tremendous strength and power of the U.S. laboratory capacity, getting everybody working on this and creating tests and having widespread test availability, we had CDC trying to keep running everything by itself.
The federal government was prepared to enforce the rules, sending this memo on February 6, telling state health departments to actively police against labs using their own coronavirus tests. The reasoning behind the tight regulations were good, assure the safety and efficacy of tests. But Dr. Glenn Morris of the University of Florida says the FDA rules were written for normal situations, not a crisis.
When we suddenly hit the point where we were looking at China and seeing what was going on there, what we needed was extremely aggressive leadership. We've got to move fast because otherwise we're going to run into a problem.
The problem developed as soon as the CDC rolled out its own test for verification. It didn't work.
That's just half of that report, okay? There's like another 2 minutes of it showing that these private labs, these clinical labs, these university labs, state labs, they were all trying to develop their own tests, and Donald Trump refused to let the FDA give them the authority to create, distribute, and use tests so that we could go into containment mode, which is what they did in South Korea. And that is why in a country that has 30 million more people than South Florida, than this whole state of Florida has, they had 10,000 cases, and Florida has 20,601 cases as of yesterday. He's a failure. He is an abject failure. And he is incompetent and has always been incompetent. And competency matters when you have a pandemic, when the nation is in peril. It matters who the president is. It matters who your governor is. And unfortunately, South Dakota, you have the worst. Florida, the worst. Iowans, you're in deep doo-doo. Arkansans, feel bad for you. The Hutchinson brothers. Can you believe that? Marianne in Illinois.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, hello. I want to know how come we have heard about China, how much virus, we heard about South Korea, we heard about France, Germany, but we never heard a word about North Korea. Why don't we hear anything about North Korea?
Because it's a closed society. It's a hermit nation. It's a nation under like a dictatorship, autocratic rule. You don't hear much about Russia either, do you?
Yeah, both of them are dictators.
Yes, well, that's why.
Doesn't Trump want to be a dictator? Isn't he a puppet for Korea?
What does that have to do with them being dictatorships? What he wants, yes, he wants to be a dictator. But that's why you don't hear any information from Russia or South Korea, because they are dictatorships.
What about those missiles that Korea sent out a month ago? Couldn't they contain the virus?
Oh, for Pete's sake. Oh, good Lord. Chris in California. You want to know why I don't
Hi,
go to
Randy.
the phones as much as other people? That's why. I just really.
Hi, Randy. Thanks
Hello.
for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say, the wartime president thing, but, thank God he's not thank God this isn't a real war because, we'd be getting.
Oh, it is a real war. It is a real
well,
war.
you know what
We're
I
at
mean,
war with a
combat war,
a
but-
virus.
Right. But not an actual combat because he's actively.
Well, people are dying, whether or not you realize that.
He's actively hampering the individual states.
And what makes you think he would be any different in case of a war? What makes you think if we were attacked by one of his friendly dictatorships?
Ask you. That's what I wanted to ask you. Isn't that treasonous? That he's actively supporting.
I think so.
So I mean, they didn't hold George W. Bush accountable for his, crimes against humanity. So I don't hold my breath for.
No,
for
and they
Trump
won't.
ever
You know
being
why?
accountable.
You know why? Because we will have another president, and we will hang up a sign that says "Under new management," which is the only thing that will save us. Okay, that's the only time we'll get a vaccine. It's the only time that we'll get, information and guidance that will actually help us defeat this thing, right? And when that happens, that president is going to turn around and he's going to say, only in dictatorships do you investigate your political opponents. And we'll get another 9/11 commission. They will document all the failures of the government in the year 2020 and how there was a failure to respond and how material was stolen from states and how the governors were forced to compete against and nobody, and wherever there is
and how Kushner and everyone profited. And,
yeah, and wherever there is a name, it will be redacted, and that will be that.
Unfortunately, you're right.
I know, because that is what America does. It moves forward. It doesn't look backward. In this case, this man needs to die in jail. I believe he's already committed enough crimes to die in jail. But if we did a deep dive into everything that the Democrats warned about during the impeachment, that you couldn't trust them,
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Joe Biden, he's the presumptive Democratic nominee. Do you have any plans yet on when you'll start sharing or when the White House will start sharing some of that information about the coronavirus? Your president.
Well, nobody's called about coronavirus from their standpoint. Look, they had the H1N1, which is swine flu, and that was a big failure. That was a tremendous failure. They had a lot of failures. And you take a look at the history, and 17,000 people died. And you talk about late. They were so late. They were late like it never even existed. That was a big problem. Caused a lot of other people a big problem too. So if Joe Biden would like a briefing, I'd certainly get him a briefing. I don't know what he'd do with it.
Oh, my God. All right. So the real number of people who died over a period of 1 year, and at the end of that 1 year, we had a vaccine for H1N1. The total number of of people who died in the United States was 12,000. Today, we have 23,134 Americans dead. 9/10 of the population have been tested. And the president is threatening governors with withholding PPE, with withholding tests. Last week last Friday, Donald Trump was saying he was refusing to pay for tests anymore, and the states needed to pay for their own testing. And then they reversed themselves yesterday and said, no, all right, we'll pay for some tests. But I mean, how could 12,000 people dying of a flu be a failure, but 23,000 people dying in a period of a month? 12,000 over a year was horrible. I mean, it's a bad flu, but we have a vaccine for it. I actually had the vaccine this year for that. A lot of good it's going to do me, but I had it. And now in a month, we have 23,134 dead. In 1 month. This is why the hospitals are overwhelmed. Okay, this is why Hackensack, New Jersey had to convert a cafeteria space in a hospital to a treatment space. And they're standing on the stage, nobody's overwhelmed, and there's no shortage, and it's the governor's fault. Oh, and it's Obama's fault. This man has been president for almost 4 years now, and he's still blaming President Obama for his emptying of the federal supplies.
Remember, I and you saw the stories, I inherited this administration, Mike, myself, the whole administration, we inherited a stockpile where the cupboards were bare. There was nothing. And I say it, and I'll say it again, just like we didn't have ammunition, we didn't have medical supplies, we didn't have ventilators, we didn't have a lot of things that should have been had, and you can read your own stories on that because you know what happened. They didn't want to spend the money.
It's 3 years later. We've had you for almost 4 years now, and you're still blaming somebody. I never heard of such a thing in my life, and I don't know how the maggots, support this. I don't know how. Pat in Washington State.
Yes, Miss Randi, you got your finger near that smooch button?
You want me to? Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so my question is, the governor's going to protect their medical supplies being shipped in with the National Guard? Would that give Trump an excuse to declare martial law?
It seems to me that yesterday's briefing was his approach to telling the American people that he's about ready to do martial law. Yeah.
Right. Could I add something else?
If you feel strongly about it.
Well, it's maybe kind of a joke. Do the Democratic senators give this to the Republican senators? Pretzel salt? That kind of a joke.
I don't get it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody get that? Did you get that? I didn't get that. So here, what we do have is governors forming sort of nation states, right? So you've got governors in the Northeast. Massachusetts has a Republican governor, but Baker is the Republican. He's joining the Democratic governors from New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. They're forming a nation, okay? And there's a reason why they're doing that. It's to fight off the feds who are stealing their stuff. That's number one. Out in on the West Coast, you have a nation state, California. When Gavin Newsom speaks, he refers to California as a nation state. And that's because California's got like the 5th largest economy. The reason why California and Washington State and Oregon are banding together is because they did the right thing and they know what the right thing is. They know what it looks like. You know, you've got the gig economy, right? You've got people working for Amazon. You got people working for Google. You got people and they're working from home. That was the smart move, right? We in the South here, it's hard to work from home, in a lot of our businesses because it's a service-oriented economy. So you got waiters, waitresses, tour guides, people that, charter boats. You've got a service economy down here. It's kind of hard to work from home. So what you have are people who are literally lining up at food banks because they can't run their small businesses. They can't run their big businesses. They can't go to their big businesses because it's a service economy. You got dentists' office that are closed. You got elective surgeries that have been canceled. So we have a service industry down here. And honestly, nobody's ever seen anything like it where people are lining up for miles for food and for testing. That is, you have to be sick. Now, New Jersey, oh my God. I read an article today, I think it was in the New York Times or the Washington Post. It's in the homework, randyrhodes.com, click on homework, it's free. And the Washington Post is making all their stuff free. It's not behind a paywall during the pandemic. So, I'm posting their stuff a lot because you can get it for free now. And they're saying in New Jersey, people line up for miles and they have to be very sick to even get a test, okay? So they're very, very sick in their cars. Some of them have their elderly parents with them. Some of them have their children with them. They're very sick and they have to spend the whole night waiting for the test place to open, and then the miles-long line to get the test. They'll come and they'll tell you, crack your window. No, roll it up some more. Just crack it so I could hear. And they'll ask, what are your symptoms? And take your temperature and all this stuff. And then if you qualify, they'll give you the swab because they're running short on Q-tips. America is running short on Q-tips. Can you believe this? On swabs and vials, the little testing vials, and the little plastic tips that go on the test, they're because we don't make anything here. All right, and then maybe they'll get their test if they qualify, and then they're told to wait 3 to 7 days. One man who was tested about 3 weeks ago finally got his test result in New Jersey yesterday, and guess what it said? Inconclusive. One girl who was obviously so sick, she came up negative. I don't think these tests work.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
For instance, if a governor issued a stay-at-home
When you
order,
say my authority, the president's authority, not mine, because it's not me. This is when somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total. And that's the way it's got to be.
Oh my God.
It's total. It's total. And the governors know that.
So if
the governors know that. Now you have a couple of bands of excuse me. You have a couple.
Could you rescind that order?
You have a couple of bands of Democrat governors, but they will agree to it. They will agree to it. But the authority of the President of the United States having to do with the subject we're talking about is total.
If you don't think that that's a threat to declare martial law, to override the states and any decision the states make, to stay closed, to keep public gatherings closed, to keep public schools closed, to ban church gatherings of 10 or more. If you don't think that's a threat, trust me, you're not listening. You're not hearing that the President of the United States is literally threatening governors with withholding things that could save your life in exchange for them agreeing to give him what they call plenary power, the power to do whatever he wants. Now, Andrew Cuomo was asked about this claim, and this morning he said, let me explain the Constitution.
President Trump, as you know, said yesterday at the White House press briefing that, quote, the president calls the shots. Governors can't do anything without the approval of the president of the United States. Your reaction?
We had this argument. It was done a long time ago. People by the name of Hamilton and Jefferson and Madison and Washington, and they concluded this. They wrote a document that's called the Constitution of the United States, and it is an explicit and intricate balance of power between the federal government and the state governments. And it says the federal government does not have absolute power. It says the exact opposite that the president said. It says that would be a king. We would have had King George Washington. And we didn't have King George Washington, and we don't have King Trump. We have President Trump. And remember, the colonies created the federal government. The states created the federal government, not the other way around. We have the 10th Amendment that is explicit. Certain responsibilities are state responsibilities. Health, welfare, quarantine, those are health responsibilities. Yeah. So the president should not even think of going there. That would be divisive and political, and it would be totally contrary to everything we've been trying to do by working in a cooperative fashion.
That's true. But the president, you can't tell him he's wrong because he will punish you by withholding PPE, by withholding test kits, by withholding swabs, by withholding vials. So I guess everybody thought that when we had another civil war, it would be the North against the South again. The South's going to do it again and all that. No, turns out it's going to be the East and the West. Yes, the East and the West against the Central, because the Iowas, the Arkansas, the South Dakotas, the North Dakotas that won't close down their societies that are allowing people to get infected by standing shoulder to shoulder in unsafe work environments, that are refusing to give workers PPE or face masks while they cut up our meat. They're the ones that are going to be sick and dying. And the East and the West, I swear to God, it's going to be like Snoop Dogg versus Jay-Z, and the president will be Suge Knight, trying to get them to fight each other. And it's going to be the middle that's going to get left out. It is. The middle states are the ones that are going to have to look to Trump to save them, because the East and the West will take care of things, because they are forming nation states out of many states, the West Coast and the East Coast. And I got news for you. That's where more people live. That's where most people live. Tumbleweeds don't vote, Donald. Tom in Florida.
Hey, Randy. I think I've got a new, just to the GOP, the Grand Old Party. We're in the process right now of printing up something new. It's called Grifters Oppressing People.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's what they are, you know, they're grifters. The Republican Party is grifters. So instead of Grand Old Party,
mm-hmm. Okay.
Oppressing people. So,
well, they've
might
always
do a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your contribution. Appreciate it. Johnny in Texas.
Hey, Randy. Did you say earlier that we're at the current death tally for the COVID-19 is about 23,000 people so far in 4 weeks?
23,134.
Okay, so we're less than 1,000 away from 6 9/11s, I guess.
Yeah.
So our checks and balances.
New York has lost over 10,000 people, so that's like 3 9/11s.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the bigger picture in terms of our country, keeping it together instead of devolving into, I don't even want to talk, I don't even want to mention it by name, but our checks and balances, they seem to fail us, because you and I both know Mike Pence, he's not going to invoke the 25th. Otherwise, he would have done it already.
Oh, he stood there last night.
Defending Donald Trump just days ago.
Those reporters asked Mike Pence last night whether or not the president was being truthful when he said that he has total power. And Mike Pence said, yeah, it's true. The president has plenary power, total power. I mean, that's why I'm saying, you know, he would be the likely person to save this country, to stand up and say, this man is bat crap crazy and he's dangerous. But he won't.
Well, you're laying down the groundwork for my proposition.
Okay.
That's, you and I and many viewers and listeners in your audience know that desperate people and desperate times call for desperate measures. So here's one of my ideas. I'm just spitballing here. You ready? You got various organizations already in place with membership and resources and infrastructure. We've got Code Pink, the ACLU, Black Lives Matter, and Move On, just to name a few. We get the heads of those organizations to get together and start reaching out to their members and to citizens in general for the purpose of assembling a dozen citizens who are Democrats and a dozen citizens who are registered Republicans from each of 35 states for the purpose of convening a group, an organized mob, to arrive in Washington with the aid of several district attorneys from different states to call for law enforcement to physically apprehend both Pence and Trump.
I don't know that works.
Well, look at it this way. If I get a postcard in the mail from Galveston County to go serve jury duty to potentially be one of 12 individuals with the power of incarcerating or taking someone's life, let's take a look about the consequences of this one administration, of this one guy, what he's doing. Don't you think we can make an adjustment in the math?
Yeah, but the process in this country is so slow that by the time we got to November, right, that process would only be started.
My process that I am proposing?
Yeah.
I don't think so. You might be surprised what the American people are capable of doing when you let them do their thing. Right now,
but
you're
you're suggesting that American citizens kidnap basically the president and the vice president of the United States, and I just don't.
No.
I just don't want to encourage
No,
anything
it's not kidnapping.
like
It's not kidnapping, Randy.
What is
it's
it?
citizens arrest because we want them.
But you
set aside.
can't arrest the president while he's president. You just can't. This is what the impeachment went back to. This is what the OLC rule. This is what the Mueller report all went back to. That the premise is that you cannot indict a sitting president until he's no longer president. So what you're saying,
but look at what happens.
you're
The president
saying,
is not
what
allowed.
you're saying
Hello?
is that the states override the federal laws, which can't happen, okay, in a democracy, and that they kidnap the president because there would be nothing lawful about doing that in our democracy.
In our democracy, we're not supposed to separate women and children from their migrant
I
parents.
get it, but the person who did it
them.
can't be held responsible until they're not the president of the United States anymore. That's our democracy. I hate to tell you.
Well, I hate to tell you this. If we don't do something quick, we're not going to have a democracy to talk about anymore.
I agree with you. I think everybody has to be ready and willing and able to become voting martyrs, basically, because we're going to end up having to vote in some sort of a pandemic. You have a president that's trying to destroy the Postal Service so that he can end the idea of vote by mail, which means we're all going to be Wisconsin. And those people showed up.
You're making my argument even more valid.
No, I'm not. You can't equate an election with kidnapping the president and the vice president, which is what you're suggesting. You can't have states arresting a federal officer of the United States who is protected by the federal government. It would be a coup. Okay, it would be a coup. What you could have is the governors using their rights to not follow him.
Mary, how does the man the fault?
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
Hey!
It's a figment of your imagination. Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We see light. We're starting to see it more than ever before. We've held our rate, the numbers, everything we've done. We've been very, very strong on it and very powerful on it.
I came home yesterday and Jessica was crying. She was crying, hysterically crying. And I thought, did she see Howard naked or in a swimsuit or some such thing? Or maybe something happened to Grandma. Or, she found out that about 43,000 taxpayers are getting checks for $1.7 million, and she's getting a measly $1,200 while she's unemployed. I didn't know why she was crying. And then I thought, well, maybe she saw that on the TV there. And realized he is in charge of a government in the middle of a pandemic. No, you know why she was crying? This was so beautiful. This really was. This warmed the cockles of your heart, which apparently get ate up by the COVID. Oh my God, this thing is a much more complex thing, this disease, than you thought. I will show you something a little bit into the show that's going to blow your freaking mind about what it does. But it was because she was crying because she saw Barack Obama. See, now you know I did a good job, right? Now you know I did. Personally, I think Donald Trump, he's putting his name on the paper checks that are going out, the measly $1,200 that each and every person is going to get, which pays for about a fraction of your rent. And people are just going to go out and waste it on things like, food and gas. You crazy, crazy people, you. But she was watching Barack Obama endorse Joe Biden, and she began to weep, thinking of a time when we had, and I asked her, why are you crying? Because you're seeing Obama? She said, because he's so presidential, and I miss him. He was such a decent person. He had character. He was smart. I miss that in a leader. I miss that. And I was so moved. I mean, I really was. So then I go into my little yellow office, right, which is, where I work at home, And, I face the wall. I don't want to. And all of a sudden I hear like weeping because I'm editing the Obama endorsement of Joe Biden because it was like 12 minutes long. So I'm editing it for today. And I hear her weeping again. And I turn her, really? And she's, I don't know. I can't help it. I miss him. I miss him. I miss sanity. I miss everything about those years. I miss everything. I miss it all. I miss my life. I miss it. It was real. It was absolutely real. She was just hysterical crying. And then she started laughing, crying. You ever laugh, cry? That's an ugly cry, Oprah. The crying, the hysterical crying, that's an ugly. But when you laugh, cry, oh, I don't even know. Your face doesn't even know what to do. Has no idea where it's going. But so I edited this while she was crying.
Of course, Democrats may not always agree on every detail of the best way to bring about each and every one of these changes. But we do agree that they're needed. And that only happens if we win this election. Because one thing everybody has learned by now is that the Republicans occupying the White House and running the U.S. Senate are not interested in progress. They're interested in power. Oh! They've shown themselves willing to kick millions off their health insurance and eliminate pre-existing condition protections for millions more, even in the middle of this public health crisis, even as they're willing to spend $1 trillion on tax cuts for the wealthy. They've given polluters unlimited power to poison our air and our water and denied the science of climate change, just as they denied the science of pandemics. Repeatedly, they've disregarded American principles of rule of law and voting rights and transparency, basic norms that previous administrations observed regardless of party, principles that are the bedrock of our democracy. So our country's future hangs on this election, and it won't be easy. The other side has a massive war chest. The other side has a propaganda network with little regard for the truth. Oh! On the other hand, pandemics have a way of cutting through a lot of noise and spin to remind us of what is real and what is important. This crisis has reminded us that government matters. It's reminded us that good government matters, that facts and science matter, that the rule of law matters, that having leaders who are informed and honest and seek to bring people together rather than drive them apart, those kind of leaders matter. In other words, elections matter. Right now, we need Americans of goodwill to unite in a great awakening against a politics that too often has been characterized by corruption, carelessness, self-dealing, disinformation, ignorance, and just plain meanness. And to change that, we need Americans of all political stripes to get involved in our politics and our public life like never before. For those of us who believe in building a more just, more generous, more democratic America, where everybody has a fair shot at opportunity, for those of us who believe in a government that cares about the many and not just the few, for those of us who love this country and are willing to do our part to make sure it lives up to its highest ideals, now's the time to fight for what we believe in.
That was tear jerking because without naming the orange, Twitler, of course he was talking about this incompetent moron. Of course he was talking about this selfish bastard. Of course he was talking about the carelessness and the corruption and the disregard for the rule of law that Donald Trump exhibits every time he opens up his pie hole. Every single time he stands there, he says, "I'm in total control. I control everything." He makes crap up. He assigns powers to himself that he neither wants nor wields, and he does it because he botched a response to a pandemic. He cheated in the last election. He is thin-skinned. He calls people losers. He calls viruses names because he thinks somehow that makes him superior to a freaking organism. I don't know, but it really did get. I mean, I hadn't seen it because I was working, and I was like, oh my God. Wow, listen, sanity and character and fortitude and caring and an appreciation of American sacrifice and an understanding. The only thing that was missing, I have to tell you, is I'm not so sure there will be an election. I'm not so sure it'll be fair. And I'm not so sure that people won't have to martyr themselves in order to vote, because Donald Trump is very keen on destroying the Postal Service, as you know, which is starting now to get some play in the press. Because the Postal Service is an integral part of our elections in at least 5 states, right? 5 states vote entirely by mail. Those of you who request an absentee ballot, you make the request by mail, and then the absentee ballot comes to you by mail. More people are going to want a ballot mailed to them than ever before. And we are sitting here wondering if we will have reliable mail, as the mailmen, the postal workers, are risking their lives in the middle of a pandemic, because now it's what? Through rain and sleet and snow and hail and corona. Through Rona. I miss him.
Things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, so this is Joe Biden's new ad.
I haven't heard about testing in weeks. We've tested more now than any nation in the world.
My name's Luke. I'm a high schooler who lives in Seattle.
I'm a 26-year-old healthy teacher.
I'm a student at Washington State University.
My uncle, Glenn, is 59 years old.
I'm from Beaver, PA.
The first 3 times when I went to my local hospital next to my house, they told me that my symptoms aren't severe enough.
The U.S. does not have enough coronavirus test kits to meet the current demand.
The testing. The U.S. has been lagging far behind.
Not just in tests, but the components needed to conduct the test.
Washington, D.C. public health.
2 weeks ago, I presented with all of the symptoms associated with COVID-19.
I had a sore throat, a low-grade fever.
He has had symptoms of coughing, fever.
Having severe respiratory system symptoms.
He's not been able to get a test at all.
The physician informed me that she was sorry I did not meet the criteria.
They're not going to test me because they don't have enough supplies.
There was no way I could get tested because I wasn't around anyone who was a confirmed case. They said, just assume you have it, stay home, isolate yourself.
Nobody can go out there and get tested like the president is saying. There aren't enough supplies.
If you're not testing anybody, then how do you know if you've been next to anybody that had the COVID-19 virus?
I need to know to protect my parents.
It's hard in a time like this when the government is dishonest to the people.
We've tested more now than any nation in the world.
It's pretty powerful. These ads are really good. So yesterday you had Obama endorsing Joe Biden. Biden put out this new ad, obviously. His ads have been insanely good. His presence on social media is really good. But that's the problem. The problem is that the president of the United States, the orange one, the Twitler, who is giving away the store to the richest Americans, even in the middle of a pandemic, who lies to the American people, even in the middle of a pandemic, who claims autonomous power that he does not have to override the state governors who have the executive power over their states. I mean, he just makes crap up, right? And he keeps on doing this. But even in the middle of all of that, even in the middle of, a pandemic, Trump still needs to brand the U.S. Treasury a Trump-branded Treasury. He needs to sign checks. He needs to check his ratings. He needs to proclaim he's #1 on Facebook. He needs to deny that people aren't being tested. He needs to do that. And says he's not responsible for it. One day it's the governor's obligation to come up with these tests, and then the next day he'll do it, and then the next day Companies will do it, and then it's just so unbelievable. And of course, no one can stop social distancing until we have enough tests. I was looking at a bunch of models and the scientists that create them, and a lot of people are saying that the numbers that we see of people who have this virus is about 6% of the number of people who have this virus. How could that be? Well, because we're not testing, and no one knows who has it, who's a carrier, who's asymptomatic and is able to pass it on. You have to. I mean, the people that are sitting in their cars, the reports that you see. I mean, this was New Jersey yesterday.
Oh, I got in line about almost 2 hours ago. We are in Bergen County Community College and trying to get tested. I went to the ER the other week. They said that I had COVID-19, but I wanted to still get tested so I can go back to work.
I showed some symptoms and I went to the ER, and I'm here now because this is about the only place that I know that might be able to test me today for COVID-19. A lot of places don't have enough tests.
Right.
Yesterday they told me they only had 10.
10.
And some days they have less. So even if the doctor feels that I'm a candidate to be tested, I may not get the test done the same day. So I drove out here from West Orange to see if maybe they'll be able to test me today. The drive wasn't that bad because the traffic wasn't that bad. It's the sitting here, not knowing. I don't even know where this line is looping to.
We got here at 7 in the morning, and we're just now leaving. So it's been about 4 hours.
Oh my God. Look at this.
He's my father. I actually got tested because I've been taking care of him, but he's the one that actually had symptoms, so he's had like almost all the symptoms. He's had a fever for a couple of days. He had body aches, chest pain, but today he seems okay, so we wanted to get tested just to find out if he had it or not. And you go to the hospital and you can't get tested there. They say 3 to 5 days until you get results back. He has to go back to work, but we can't go back to work until he's cleared out. So for him, it is a problem waiting this long, yeah.
I mean, people want to go back to work and they can't go back to work because they have symptoms and but you can't get tested. Can't get tested. And the president just stands there and says, anybody who wants to test, get it to. And now it's the governor's fault. They don't have to. Now it's the World Health Organization that does it. It's their fault. And they offer tests. Remember? We turned them down. We didn't want their damn tests. Our CDC was going to do the tests. Donald Trump, I want our tests. And our tests were flawed. And it took them 3 weeks to figure that out. Now we're short of Q-tips. Now we're short of swabs. Now we're short of tests. Now we're short of, vials. I mean, this is just bizarro world. This is like the worst I have ever seen anybody in the history of this country manage a war. He's supposed to be at war with the unseen enemy. Can you imagine if, I don't know, Hawaii got attacked by Japan and the president said it's Hawaii's problem? Because that's what this president would say. It's Hawaii's problem. New York got attacked on 9/11. It's New York's problem. Let them fix it. Let them clean it. It's not for me to clean it. I mean, I never in my whole life, and all these sycophants that follow him, nobody is interested in a solution. Not one of these people, they're all interested in making excuses for him, finding odd stories and pushing them out as being, this is the problem or that. The problem is we don't have tests, and without tests, we cannot open this country, period, end of story, because this is a very complex virus. This virus attacks not just your lungs now. Now they're saying that this virus attacks your kidneys, and it is causing people to need to be on dialysis, and there are not enough dialysis machines to do the renal therapy that is needed to clear these patients out. We also have immune systems that react like they storm the Bastille. The cells in your body that are awakened when a virus is present, and it just inflames everything from your heart to your kidneys to your lung. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And yet you got those sick people on the other side of, as if there's a side to a virus, but they're on the other side of curing. They're on the other side of testing. They're on the other side of mitigating. They're on the other side of containment. Yeah, they're on the other side of that. Can you imagine? Like, you should die so we can go and make money. You know who those people are, right? And they are literally sitting there every single day saying things like, death is part of life. You got some Republican from Illinois. Oh, well, the old people are going to have to die. It's a small price to pay to get this, get this economy open. What? Solve the freaking problem. Solve it. Test everybody. Now.
Fatality. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Folks, I'm going to tell you something. Right here and right now, I am suspicious of anybody who doesn't want this economy reopened. It ought to be the overriding objective of everybody, including the health people.
The health people.
Even if it's just a desire, even if it is something they don't think that can happen, it ought to be a desire. When I see people, when I detect people who are not interested in this, I'm sorry, I can't help it. I get suspicious. It ought to be the overriding desire of everybody. This is not sustainable. We are destroying the economy every day that it's shut down. We're destroying it. Every day. We did it to ourselves. And the idea that there are people who think this could go on like this with no end in sight, that's absurd. It's absurd on its face. Everything happening today is in violation of basic human nature. Everything. We don't shut down for illness ever. We never have shut down for illness before. We've never shut down for mass death.
Oh,
we've never done it before. We've never shut down on the projection of mass death. We've never done it before.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Limbaugh, and you will atone. Hey, idiot. You can't open an economy if people don't have confidence to go to a movie theater. You can't open an economy if people don't have the confidence to sit in a restaurant and they're not sure that the server is free of COVID-19. You dunce, you moron, you shill. And this is a man who's getting the best medical care that money can buy. He's got lung cancer, advanced stage lung cancer. And he's sitting there saying, I'm ready to die. We'll open this economy. And why aren't you ready to die for Donald Trump's economy? Why aren't you ready to die? How do you open an economy when nobody has zero confidence in anything? Not even the food supply anymore, okay? Not even, people that are butchering your pork and beef and chickens and cows. People are freaked out because this president is an abject failure. We did not do this to ourselves. This man did this to us. If we would have done containment instead of what we're doing now, which is suffering with mitigation, we would never have had to lock down anything. That is the beauty of the lesson from South Korea. They never locked down their economy. They didn't have to. They did not have to. You get these tests out, you get people breathing a sigh of relief that they can go back to work, and they will go back to work. You give people, these serology tests and find out if they have antibodies that can help those who do have it. And then we'll get back to work. These maniacs, these mass maniacs who are out there screaming and yelling because they think they have the right to infect other people. Don't you know that your rights begin and end where your freaking COVID-infested nose begins and ends? You do not have the right to spit in someone's food when you have COVID. That's murder. This disease destroys the lungs. This disease destroys your kidneys. This disease destroys your heart. This disease destroys your liver. You want to see what this disease looks like from the inside out? I'm warning you, this is graphic. This was done by a thoracic surgeon at George Washington University Hospital.
The video starts by kind of going through the bones melting away, and then kind of taking you around the chest on the outside. Anything in yellow that you're seeing is COVID-infected, destroyed lung tissue.
Destroyed.
What struck me, almost right away, and, for somebody, especially for someone who's been in practice for almost 20 years, is just kind of the extent of the lung damage. So, in the past, this has been compared to, your garden variety pneumonia. It's been compared to the seasonal flu. And one of the things we need to get across, and we try harder and harder every day, is that this is nothing like the seasonal flu. This is not like your typical pneumonia. A typical, let's say, bacterial pneumonia would typically affect, one part of the lung, perhaps, one lobe of the lung. And again, as you can see in the video, it not only affects both lungs, but affects various parts of each lung. Oh. So it's pretty diffuse damage. And the other thing, the caveat in all of this too, is that the images that you were looking at, the video that you're looking at, is based on the CAT scan that was performed before he got so sick that he had to be intubated and placed on a ventilator. So if you were to repeat that CAT scan perhaps 48 hours later, chances are you're going to be seeing much more yellow than you actually are.
Okay, you get the idea. That's a 59-year-old man who had no comorbidities, as we now learn to say, and died at 59 years old. His lungs were literally, the tissue in his lungs were literally totally damaged. They were eaten up, okay? And now they're finding the same thing is happening to people's kidneys. Sometimes it's happening to their livers. Sometimes they're seeing swelling of the heart. Sometimes they're seeing inflammation of the heart muscle. Sometimes they're seeing irregular heart rhythms that lead to cardiac arrest. Sometimes they see it actually invade the nose. That's why people, you hear a lot of people saying they lost their sense of smell. They're saying that the reason why is because this virus attacks and invades olfactory nerve endings, the nerve endings in your nostrils, right? And so those little nerve endings are disrupted, and they can't send the signal to your brain that says, oh, that smells good, or ooh, that smells bad, okay? A quarter of the people experience that. Most of those people who lost their sense of smell did not seem to develop the severe respiratory problems. I mean, there's so much about this that we don't know. Some people developed pink eye. Some people had conjunctivitis, and I get that all the freaking time. I had it right at the beginning of this. Remember, I said, look at my eyeball. It was all, red and stuff. Yeah, I get pink eye all the time. I don't know. Well, one study of 38 hospitalized patients in China found that a third of the people who had died had pink eye. Now they're finding out that, yes, some people, the COVID virus attaches to the mucous membrane that covers the eye. Some people, it attaches to their gastrointestinal tract, and it causes, stomach issues, diarrhea, vomiting, and other symptoms. Why does it behave like a hybrid of all these different viruses? We don't know, and they don't care. They don't care. And by them, I mean the people that are out there not arguing and screaming at the top of their lungs for tests. They're arguing and screaming for their right to infect you. They're out there screaming and blocking the roadways to hospitals today in Michigan because they want the right to just walk around and infect people without knowing if they are carriers. They want the right to kill your children. They want the right to kill your grandma. They want the right to kill you. I'm sorry. Your rights begin and end with your olfactory nerve endings, okay? You don't get to put your droplets on me.
Clear. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
We see light. We're starting to see it more than ever before. We've held our rate, the numbers, everything we've done. We've been very, very strong on it and very powerful on it.
They will follow him to the gates of hell. I swear to God, they will. It's a death cult. I mean, mass death is everywhere, and there is a way to actually keep it from being everywhere and keeping it contained, and they don't want to do it. They don't want to. They would rather just thin out the herd. They would just rather see the old people go. They would just rather see 59-year-old men go. They would rather not understand the science. They would, but they're so pro-life. These people. Mass death has never kept us from having an open economy. Pro-life much? Aaron in New Mexico. Oh, jeez.
Hi, Randy.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
I'm sorry. Hi.
Hey.
Hey. Anyways, I want to make this really quick because I have things to do. Anyways, we went from a POTUS to a POS. Okay. And this spoiled, just 5-time draft dodger, tax cheat. I mean, he's calling the shots.
He's a liar. He is a liar.
He's a liar. And he lists lies, and it makes me sick. I mean,
yes, it will make you sick. His lies will literally kill you at this point. That's the problem. That is the massive problem. That is the huge, undeniable, in your face, in your lungs, in your gastrointestinal tract, in your eyes, in your nose. That is the problem. Dean in Los Angeles.
Good afternoon, Randy.
Hello, sir.
I'll go easy on you here.
Thank you.
So, I've been following this as you have. I know since January, and watching this whole thing progress, and it really comes down, in my mind, to one thing that I find really insidious: that Trump and the administration is monetizing a pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't help but monetize things. I got to figure out how I'm going to make money.
You know what cracks me up?
He's done that all along with everything. And now a pandemic. How bad can you get?
Well, so here's the thing that really, really tweaks me today, and that is that all of a sudden we find out that buried in the CARES Act is a temporary limit, a suspended limitation on how much owners of pass-through businesses can deduct against their non-business income. So what does that mean? That means that 43,000 Americans are going to get a check for $1.7 million on average. Okay, some will get more, some will get less. But millionaires will get around $1.7 million in stimulus relief, which is 82% of the money from the CARES Act. And the rest of us little pikers will get $1,200. And who?
And who? 90 billion?
Yes. No, it's more than 90 billion. It's 170 billion. It's 90 billion in 2020 alone for the tax deduction that's already in the tax code. But in the CARES Act, we're going to give $170 billion to 43,000 millionaires. What's really sickening about this, what's really disgusting, is pass-throughs are real estate firms. Pass-throughs are, and these millionaires, they got more of the stimulus package than hospitals got. Hospitals got $100 billion. This is going to cost $170 billion. Somebody wrongly seized on a pandemic and decided that they would give 82% of the benefits to 43,000 taxpayers who earn more than $1 million a year.
Exactly. It started from the beginning. The time we needed to start attacking was to actually do tests from day one.
Yes.
And what did the CDC do? They didn't do a thing. And 6 weeks went by. It's been a month now. March 15,
but check this out.
Was when he actually said it was a
Don't you remember the World Health Organization offered us tests?
Yes. And what did he do? He said, let's try and get LabCorp. Let's put Made in the USA on our lab.
No. You're skipping a step. First of all, the rest of the world took the rest of the world took those tests. We didn't. He said the CDC will do it. The federal government, the Centers for Disease Control, will do it. And their test was broken. It literally did not function. It didn't work. And for
they didn't have enough.
And for 3 weeks, he stood there and lied and said, by next week, you'll have 1 million tests. And the week after that, you'll have 4 or 5 million tests, but I don't think you'll need that many. But we'll have them. We'll have them. And anybody who wants to get a test can get a test. He was lying. He knew that they couldn't develop a test for this virus at the CDC and that he had denied the World Health Organization's offer of tests, right? And now, yesterday, in order to, convince people that there's somebody else to blame but him, he blames the World Health Organization that offered us the test and says they're the corrupt ones, they're the bad ones, and I'm not going to give them the 400 million that I'm supposed to give them this year, right? So instead, he passes out 190 billion to himself and to Jared Kushner.
Yep, it's remarkably shocking how.
But in chaos,
and yet there'll be people who still follow him.
In chaos, you can steal. In chaos, you can steal. And I told you that. I told you that when Bush was president. You have $9 billion that goes missing. And, then Obama returns Iran's own money that the world had locked up because of sanctions. And they return the cash to them, their own money that was seized by governments around the world. And somehow Obama is the corrupt guy, right? Obama was the one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even get how people go there in their heads.
Well, I hope people are waking up a little.
Look, that's the beauty of what Obama said yesterday. Pandemics have a way of focusing the attention on the problem, especially when it's you that's sick or your wife or your husband or your kid or your grandma or your father or your mother. It has a way of focusing you and making you want to know everything about the disease that is wiping out your freaking family. You got people sitting in line for hours and being told they can't get a test because they're not sick enough. You have people who have tested positive who are being told, go home, take Tylenol, because they don't know what to do. Because we didn't act. We didn't react. We are sitting there. The President of the United States is pointing fingers and calling even the virus itself names. Ethnic slurs. Bill in Arizona.
Hey, Randy, you still with guys.
Thank you.
Let me remind you, we beat polio.
Yeah.
We beat polio at a time when we knew 100% less, maybe more than 100% less of the science that we know now. On very little science, we beat polio. We're going to beat this.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that we will beat this, but we need America under new management if we're going to do it.
But that's just it. It's beating this is one of the lessons we need to learn, but the big lesson we need to learn is who are the people that abandoned us to this disease when they had a chance to save us in some way or form or fashion and didn't. Remember my area.
I would like to know the crazy lunatic right wingers that follow, these sycophants of Donald Trump's on the TV and the radio. You
have to know, Randy. You have to know that they're very, very, very sick people. You can't have a conversation with them. The people on TV aren't the only ones that can't speak in full sentence and not make sense. The people out in the street. I said to a lady that had 1 million Trump stickers on her car yesterday, why? And she gave me 3 absolute falsehoods. And I said, if you don't have, provable facts, it's not an answer. But this woman believed it just like she believed the sun was shining.
Yeah, I understand. I understand people can be, brainwashed by a very good con man. I understand people fall for cons every day, all day. But the truth is that the president swore an oath to protect and defend. What is it that the right wingers don't understand about protect and defend? What is it that they don't get with regard to what the president is supposed to do?
It's not what they don't get, Randy. It's what they got. And what they got is an overwhelming sense of greed.
An overwhelming sense of
greed.
Greed. No, I think
That's
people.
right.
I think people are really, really. I think they're on the right track when they point out that there's a lot of parts of our government that are super uber corrupt. But if they think that this man is draining the swamp, I want them to understand that he's draining the United States. He is the swamp, and he's draining all the money out of the United States. He is the most...
We're going to survive him. We're going to survive him too, Randy.
I hope so. I mean, I'm just worried about having an election. I want everybody to get their minds wrapped around this, because if I told you we were going to have, 30,000 people, 40,000 people dead from a virus no one could identify, you would tell me I was crazy.
Mary had a little lamb. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Here's people in Lansing, Michigan, protesting staying home.
Operation Gridlock in Lansing. This is 496 going to Lansing. You can see the people here lined up as far as you can see on the highway, all trying to get to the Capitol. And I tell you, I'm going to go sleep over here. This is, what is this, Washington and St. Joseph. You can see the people trying to get to the Capitol for this big protest. There are so many cars, trucks, people have boats. But look at this. Look at this. They're waving here.
Oh my God.
But look at how backed up the traffic is. Somebody said it's all the way to Brighton. They're here. All right.
Idiots. You're idiots. Why aren't you protesting because we don't have tests? If we had tests, you wouldn't need to stay home. You understand that? Linda in Michigan. Hello.
Hi, Randy. I live about 2 miles from the Capitol here in Lansing, and I could hear the car horns going, and apparently they didn't just protest around the Capitol. They were like driving around the city, even clogging up the main drag past Sparrow Hospital. And I was on an app called Nextdoor, and there was a thread of people making comments all along. Most everybody was sensible and against what was happening, but I heard from somebody on there that it's somehow linked to Betsy DeVos out there in Grand Rapids,
Oh, well, they're doing it in Grand Rapids, too,
Oh, I know. I didn't hear that. I know people were coming here to Lansing from all over the state, Kalamazoo and everywhere, and it was on Facebook, apparently, and they had a huge response, and I watched the local news, and a reporter went up to one vehicle, and a woman rolled down her window and was griping she couldn't go to the hair salon and get her hair done. And I'm like, what? So you can look good in your casket? I mean, there were people with their children at this thing. People were walking around. They should have been arrested. They were like congregating, and it's just stunning. It's just, people are such idiots.
They are idiots, because if this president was a decent leader, not even strong, but just if he was decent, we would have had these tests. Everybody would have known who needed to quarantine themselves, who they had come in contact with. 14 days, 6 weeks max, done. Okay? Done.
I know.
But no. Instead, they're out there protesting for always the wrong thing. Always the wrong thing. Let me get other people sick. Let me overwhelm the hospital. Let me make healthcare workers, let me get them sick. Let me infect them. Let me make them have to find a ventilator for me. And then on the other side of
Gretchen Whitmer. People are mad at Gretchen Whitmer for being the adult in the room. I mean, she's being bad cop, but she's doing what she has to do. But none of us like being cooped up, but it's snowing here. People are bitching that they can't go out on the golf courses or go boating. It's snowing here in Michigan. It started yesterday and it's supposed to go till Friday.
I know.
It's not like big accumulation, but I mean.
No, but I see it. I see it in the video.
It's not boating. Yeah, it's not golf weather.
No,
so.
It's disgusting. It's really gross. It's gray. It's snowing. It's raining. It's that wintry mix that everybody hates is what it is. But I don't know. I mean, the president of the United States called her that woman from Michigan. And
God, that makes my blood boil.
And all of a sudden, she's marked. She's marked by these know-nothing, do-nothings that have the third largest number of COVID cases in the country in that state.
I know.
I mean, what do they think their rights are? Do they really think their right includes being able to make the healthcare system sick? That they can put children's lives at risk? That they can threaten because they feel like it?
Well, you always say people need to read. I subscribe for $4 a month to the New York Times. I get it on my phone and I read their articles. Over the weekend, they had that really long one detailing all of the failures, of this whole, how Trump handled this whole thing. And then today I caught something, David Frum in the Atlantic. David Frum, is it? Or yeah, I think that's his name.
It is.
Yeah, and he's a conservative. He used to be a speechwriter for Bush and Axis of Evil and all that. And yeah, it was a really long article. Your show was coming on, so I didn't get to finish reading it, so I'll have to go back to it. But it was, he spelled it out. It was just chilling to read his article. But he covered all the bases.
You want to read something really amazing, and very few people know that this is even out there, but it is. Nancy Pelosi wrote a letter to a dear colleague letter. And
I heard about that.
Oh my God! And she outlines point by point how he dismantled the infrastructure handed to him, which was meant to plan and overcome a pandemic, which resulted in this economic disaster and these unnecessary deaths. That in January, he was warned about this pandemic, that he ignored the warnings, that he took no action, and he lied and caused unnecessary death, and that his most loyal followers think that the pandemic is a hoax because he told them that, and that it would magically disappear in April because he told them that. Now, you're in Michigan. I'm down here in Florida. I'm not happy to tell you this. Your weather is that wintry, disgusting mix, but ours, it's 91 degrees, and people here have COVID. Okay, the virus does not go away when it gets warm. But he said it would. He said it would magically disappear. He endangered lives. He threatened our economy then when he said that. And that we didn't have proper testing available, even though the World Health Organization offered it to us. The CDC's tests failed. Now he's saying, the governors have to come up with their own damn test.
He's always wrong about everything. He lives in a backwards world.
But it all causes death. It all causes destruction of a perfectly good economy that was rebuilt after the Republicans trashed it one time before.
Well, everybody's saying he has blood on his hands. I say he's like Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie, the movie, and Sissy Spacek in her satin spaghetti strap gown and just covered in blood in that one scene.
That's an evil scene.
That's how I picture Trump.
Oh, it's weird that you bring that up. Last night, Stephen King was asking what the single best line in a movie was, and so I gave him my favorite line from Goodfellas. But now all of a sudden, I'm thinking of all the different ones. I wish I could have told. And now you bring up Stephen King.
Oh, it's strange times we're living in. That's
Very
all I got to say. I'm 65 years old. I don't have kids. My parents, blissfully, are not living through this. They're already gone. And I count my blessings. I get my Social Security. I have a house and car that's paid for. I don't have to worry about children or grandchildren. I Zoomed with all my siblings a couple Sundays ago, and everybody so far is doing okay, but we're all scattered around the country. But it's just, I just cry every day when I watch the news because of all these terrible stories about what's happening to other people's lives. The Republicans are the party of me, and I think the Democrats are the party of we, and we care about the collective. And
it's not even the collective. If you care about your own health, you just don't want crazy people out there with no face masks and no gloves right now. This is a really serious illness. It eats your lungs. It eats your kidneys. It eats your liver. It eats your gastrointestinal system. This thing
horrible way to die.
It literally attaches to different cells in your body, and it just starts reproducing, and it just starts, eating all of this tissue until you have organ failure and die 14 days later. I'm sorry. It's a nasty, unbelievably painful, hideous. This is not the flu. It's not a cold. It's not even pneumonia. This is like a wild you would almost think that if somebody wanted to create something in a lab that would be so terrifying, this would be what it looked like. Just saying. Throwing it out there. We have almost 30,000 people dead. 27,760. We have almost 1 million cases in this country. We're 619,000 cases. You think this is just going to end? Hell no.
Go for launch. Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Hey, look at these lunatics.
Another incredible sight in this surreal ordeal as we battle this coronavirus pandemic. The Capitol steps, the scene of a protest. The whole idea here was that folks would stay in their car and participate in this gridlock, but we've seen a lot of folks who are saying they're not doing that. They're here, they're on the Capitol steps, staging a more traditional protest here in front of the Capitol building in Lansing. I want to show you one of the larger displays here, a huge sign that is out in the Capitol lawn. It says, "Security without liberty is called prison." An analogy they're using here to the situation that we have at present with the coronavirus lockdown. We're going to walk up here and give you an idea of the feel some of these people have. There are a number of people here from West Michigan, including some of these folks here that we get a chance to meet earlier today.
Oh, God.
First of all, tell us your name and what brought you out here.
My name is Joseph Dixon, and I came out here to support the Michigan businesses and stand up for the rights of our fellow Michiganders, and we believe that the governor has overreached and overstepped her rights with our freedoms.
If you represent any business, think about your customer. The customer is always right. And the customer doesn't have confidence that your restaurant or your bar or your barbershop or your hair salon is free of COVID. They're not coming in. You get that? You get that? You're out there. At least that guy was wearing a mask. I saw people in that video that didn't even have anything of, and they're breathing on everyone. And I mean, this is sick. This is a sick, twisted mind that thinks that they get to infect other people, and that healthcare workers should just bite it. They should just bite it. And if they get sick, oh, well, the nurse, the doctor, the thoracic surgeon, the dialysis machine person, the ventilator operator, oh, well, they'll put their face within inches of your face and risk getting aerosolized droplets in their lungs to save you. And so that's why you don't have to take care of yourself. And you don't have to protect your neighbors. What the hell is wrong with people in this country? I get that we have an entire propaganda channel. Listen, I've worked in talk radio my whole adult life just about, except for the DJ period, okay? And so I understand that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of conservative talk radio, conservative talk media for the few hours that the sane people in this country get. But to agree to be brainwashed to the point where you would risk your own children's lives for this Twitler thing? Your governor is trying to get this pandemic under control. You are number 3 in the nation for infections. Back off. Sit down, shut up, and listen and learn. We would not be here if this president was not the president. No other president of this country would have sat there letting the intelligence agencies and his own pandemic teams and the National Security Council and the World Health Organization and everybody else in this world tell him a pandemic is coming, and would have sat there and said, it will be just fine. No other person on this planet would have done that except for him. John in New York.
Hey, Randy, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm just peeved with these people from, oh, don't tread on me. You know what? Don't tread within 6 feet of me.
Well, it's a bad situation, and unfortunately, some of the government being perverted kind of got people to vote for him. But the point being is that with Trump, thank God, there's pieces of garbage out there. you don't realize they're pieces of garbage. At least you realize he's a piece of garbage now because the way he handled this. Because we were in a hot war. My God, 50,000 people would be minuscule.
619,000 people would be targeted with, bullet holes, right? They wouldn't die, but you'd have 619,607 wounded and 27,760 dead. That's what you would have.
Well, you'd have more than that if it was a hot war. That's
what you would have, according to the information that we, can get from the minuscule amount of testing we have done.
Well, I'm from New York, and I was deemed an essential worker.
Yeah.
I ended up getting sick.
You did?
And it was pretty intense, but I'm young enough and I'm healthy enough. But I went out.
What was it like?
Well, it was your body just really it really gives you a hard time. I had the diarrhea, the intestinal issues.
Yeah.
The GI. I had headaches. I had aches, stuff like that. But I went out on the 31st, and I was tested by the 6th, and I was cleared by the 9th, and I'm back to work now.
Wow.
So, I mean, a lot of it's about the governors. You got to give Cuomo. I mean, he's not everybody. You can always find fault with somebody. But
well, I know. I just have a question. I don't know what you do, but do you have any idea why the subways were left open?
Well, the subways are left open. Well, I'm working on the subway. I'm actually an electrician, and I'm working on the subways to build the subway system out for the population that hopefully will be there, working in the city after this is all over.
Yeah.
And the subways are running just to keep people moving, essential workers, firemen, policemen, nurses, doctors, stuff like that. A lot of people live out in the suburbs. Can't afford to live in the city.
Right. No, I know. I'm from there too, and I grew up in Brooklyn and Queens, and my whole big dream was to live in Manhattan, and I did for like 4 or 5 years, and then every month I would, I was a renter because you can't buy anything, and so every month I would say, why don't I just take a wheelbarrow full of money and throw it out the window every month? So I know what.
But you don't have to do that now. Trump's giving them the money.
I know.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
It is. Well, I'm glad you're okay. I'm so glad you're okay.
It's all self-serving. It's all self-serving, and all he's trying to do is vindicate himself. That's all it's about. It's sick.
I know.
It's so bad.
It is. It is. And I don't know how people don't see it. That, for me, is the mystery of all time.
Well, like I said.
More mysterious than this freaking virus.
People got so sick of the government, they feel it's perverted, and they felt that he would be fresh air.
I get why. I get why. I totally get it. I mean, it's
self-serving.
There was
completely self-serving.
There is a lot of corruption, but he gave them permission to, exponentially increase it. That's what.
Yes.
That's what I don't understand. After 3.5 years, people don't see that. Yes, there was corruption. There's always going to be some corruption when you're talking about a large economy. There's going to be hands in the coffer. There's going to be lobbyists, and there's going to be people purchasing members of Congress unless we undo Citizens United, etc. Right? I stand on that wall. I tell you, when the floodgates for money are opened, that this is not going to be good for us. And instead, people thought, oh, one man can fix this, and he's the guy. Well, after 3.5 years, don't you see that he's not draining the swamp? He's draining you. He's draining this country. He has given everything to the top. Everything.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
It is midnight in Washington. The lights are finally going out in the Capitol after a long day in the impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump. You can't trust this president to do the right thing, not for 1 minute, not for one election, not for the sake of our country. You just can't.
Bing, bing, bong, bong. Bing,
he will not change, and you know it. History will not be kind to Donald Trump. I think we all know that. Not because it will be written by never-Trumpers, but because whenever we have departed from the values of our nation, we have come to regret it, and that regret is written all over the pages of our history. If you find that the House has proved its case and still vote to acquit, Your name will be tied to his with a cord of steel and for all of history. He has betrayed our national security. He has compromised our elections, and he will do so again. You will not change him. You cannot constrain him. Truth matters little to him. What's right matters even less, and decency matters not at all. We have proven Donald Trump guilty. Now do impartial justice and convict him.
Hashtag impartial justice. Pretty amazing. People are turning out like amazing work. That's from 11 films. Just amazing work, really. Insane, because everybody who is sane understands this man is not. Everybody who is sane understands this man cannot be trusted. That when Mueller testified and he didn't think that there was a penalty to pay, he just, doubled down and extorted Ukraine to get dirt on Joe Biden. And when the Senate went along with that, the next thing you know, we're in a pandemic. And he is refusing to protect and defend the United States from a freaking pandemic. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is not a drill. This is not a test. It's really happening. People are dying. And only 0.9% of this country has had a test to screen them for this virus. We don't know how many people with no symptoms are able to get. I could be one. I could be able to kill you. I could have a weapon so powerful that I could kill your mother. And these idiots on the streets today are screaming for their right to walk around with a deadly weapon on board and kill your son. Whatever happened to, American spirit, and we can do anything, and, pro-life. Oh, Jahari, you're in Lansing. Hello.
Yay. Hi, Randy. How are you?
Hi.
I can tell that you're pretty bugged out about this. Imagine me being here.
Yeah.
We've got you talked about Sparrow Hospital. I used to work there, and it's a level 1 trauma center. It's the only level 1 trauma center in the area for, 20 miles or so, 30 miles or so. And these idiots have jammed up the entire area, from what I read, at least 10 miles.
Oh my God!
All around the entire city, it's jam packed. I haven't gone out today to see it for myself because I'm the good guy and I'm staying home.
Right.
But I think that a lot of this is about the election in November. It's a census year, and they did the exact same thing. There are a lot of right-wing dark money actors that funded movements just like this. Remember the Tea Party? They got started on April 15th, 2009.
Right. And where is their concern?
2020.
And their whole concern back then was deficit spending.
Deficit spending.
Yeah. Well, if they were sincere about any of the things they said that they cared about, this president would flip them the F out.
They don't. They never. All they're about is owning the libs. That is what they are all about. This is a time for patriotism and being neighborly and looking out for each other and having each other's back.
Yep.
But these Republicans, they will never hesitate to use any kind of a crisis to own the libs. And that's what this is all about. That's what this fake president is about. That's what his crime family masquerading as an administration is about. That's what the Republican Party is about. They're using this for the 2020 elections because they know they're about to get their butts kicked.
Well, they just did in Wisconsin, for God's sake. I mean, they just had an election where, thank God, the people that showed up were not martyring themselves. They became heroes because they showed up. Okay?
I call that.
But voting in a pandemic is never going to be good for Donald J. Trump. Voting in a pandemic is never going to be good for Mitch McConnell. It's not going to be good for any Republicans, and that is why they are trying to kill as many of us as they can, and they're trying to end the Postal Service, which we depend on to vote.
But these people are pro-life, right, Randy? They're so pro-life, they're willing to kill the voters.
You know what? They're not. They're not pro anything. That's the point. They're not.
No, they're not.
They said that they cared about the deficit. That's what the Tea Party was all about. They were concerned about the deficit spending, that the ACA was going to cost too much money, and the deficit spending was something that they could not abide. They could not stand by and watch the Treasury be sucked dry to give 20 million people health care. Right? And now, 11 years later, whatever this is, they don't give a damn. This president has run up the deficit and just completed depositing checks to the tune of $1.7 million to 43,000 of the richest Americans by using this CARES Act that was supposed to give them relief while they were waiting for him to get testing out, while they were waiting for him to contain this killer virus.
Yeah, and he gets to get his name on them. That's just obscene on its face. But I know you got to go, but I saw the thing from 11 Films. I've been seeing a lot of great stuff out there.
There's a lot of
people.
Good stuff.
We need to get our progressive millionaires and billionaires and people that want to set up Kickstarter campaigns. We need to ramp it up because this is battle time. It really is. We need to pull out every stop, every dollar, put in all effort we can to wipe the floor with these Republicans in 2020.
Well, I think we will. If we're allowed to vote, and if we can use absentee ballots, and if the states, 5 of them, that do 99.9% of their voting by mail, if the Postal Service still exists, I'm not so worried about 2020. I mean, obviously, there's many more of us who are decent Americans who have the character and fortitude to not infect other people and ask healthcare workers to risk their lives for us because we feel like going out on a boat today, and we can't.
Oh! This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The president's misconduct cannot be decided at the ballot box, for we cannot be assured that the vote will be fairly won.
Just let that sit there for a minute. Annie in North Carolina.
Hi, Randi. Love the show.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, sweetheart. Did you see Bill Bennett? He was on Fox the other day saying, this is not a pandemic.
Yeah. I played it. Well, I couldn't believe it. I mean, in the face of reality, they just sit there and deny it.
Yeah. Well, listen to what's going on down here in North Carolina, where we've got Richard Burr, the thief, and then Tom Tillis. They want your name and phone number now because he's going to call me back. We've got a group down here called Reopen NC, and they're protesting in Raleigh, calling our governor Comrade Cooper, and we don't have the right to open up our businesses. And blah, 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 blah. I mean, it is insane.
Now, I just want you to know.
On in Michigan.
I just want you to know that the big money businesses, the really serious business owners who have the ear of this Twitler, have told him, and they are saying it out loud today because he stood in the Rose Garden yesterday reading a random list of.
Like he was reading a phone book.
And those people, those businesses had no idea why he was reading their names, and so they all called him today. They called him and they said to him, Mr. President, we cannot open up our businesses until you get testing out there so we know who can go to work and who can't, because people will die on the floor of our factory. People will die in the slaughterhouse. You already got people dying in the pork processing plant. Right. People dying in Greeley, Colorado, in the beef processing plant. So you tell
the
these
grocery store workers. There's about 30 grocery store workers that have died.
So what I'm saying to you is that the big money business, the people who get paid because their businesses, are buying back their stock, those kinds of profitable businesses, they're all telling him you can't do this without tests, period.
And down here, I live in the mountains, but Raleigh, the capital, they have their children there. They're holding signs. Nobody's got a mask. They're all going, one woman was like, we're, we have weddings and stuff. It's like, okay, don't you want to be alive to have a freaking wedding?
I had to dump her. Yeah. Well, listen, everybody is very, very emotional because we are on lockdown in a free country because the president is so lame and so lazy and so stupid and doesn't read and won't read and can't stay awake during briefings about pandemics and what they do to economies and what they do to human beings and what they do to life as we know it. He's too stupid. He's too lazy. He's too without character. He's too without empathy. This man doesn't give a damn about anything except himself. And if you don't understand the truth of that, take a look around you. Everything is closed. That's because the truth of him is being shown to you. He's irresponsible. He's incompetent. He's a liar. And he's self-serving. And he's so stupid that in the service of himself, he is destroying himself. But he's taking you with him. He is a weak person. He is a poor leader. He takes no responsibility, but he takes complete authority. That's a loser. That is a losing combination for a country of doers, which is what we are. Everything you're seeing around you is completely unnecessary. This did not have to look this way. This did not have to be this way. If he would have just taken those damn tests and scaled it up like a wartime president. I told you once, during World War II, when we converted factories into airplane manufacturing, assembly lines, we were making an airplane an hour. An airplane an hour. We didn't even have an Air Force then. An airplane an hour. Because a president decreed that we should, could, and would do it. We have cured some of the saddest diseases. We essentially cured tuberculosis. Then it's making a comeback because people are anti-vaccine now. Okay? We cured polio, which struck FDR had polio. We had a president that had polio. And because he had polio, this was a man from great wealth and privilege, but because he had polio, he was able to feel other people's pain. He was able to see what the world looked like when you didn't have all the advantages anymore. He was able to have empathy and compassion. You had 3 years after the Great Depression of people just living in abject grapes of wrath poverty. And he came along and said, that does not have to be. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to look this way, and it doesn't have to be this way. And it doesn't, and it didn't, and it shouldn't, but it is, because you have a weak person, and a weak person blames other people. Does not solve problems. Patrick in California.
Randi, hey, love your stuff. Great stuff as always. You brought up a fantastic point here. With regard to the way he operates, Jabba the Hutt / Pennywise.
Stephen King again. There we go.
If he had tackled this problem the way a competent, caring person would have done it, he could have come out looking like he was a decent person, a reasonable person, and he might have had a chance of getting reelected. He might have had a chance of getting and now I guess he still does, but the likelihood that he will get reelected is dwindling pretty quickly because, well, I mean, everybody can see the fact that the words that he says are the opposite of reality. It's just amazing. He had an opportunity to kind of redeem himself and take the spotlight of impeachment away and handle this thing the way
a leader should. Yeah.
A leader. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just amazing. And one other point I wanted to make, Randi, with regard to the people that are protesting, these people, they like to see people suffer. They want to be able to impose their will. They want to make everybody else, just spread the death that you were talking about. You were saying that they had a loaded weapon, and they do. And that's the same thing with guns. They want to be able to impose their guns and their lifestyle and, the possibility of killing somebody onto others. A lot of them, I really think, feel that way. What do you think?
So I think that there's this sociological provable fact where when people are, not on the high rungs of the totem pole, they still want the ability to look down on someone else. And so and so that's documentable. And so those people who are, out there protesting because this man dropped the ball on them, this man caused all this pain, this man caused all this economic disaster that we're dealing with now, they still want to believe that, somebody is less than them. So they won't get it. Somebody less than them will get it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I love you too, and it's just it's avoidable. It's absolutely preventable. This does not have to go on this way. If they would literally just ramp up the testing, just scale it up, let every laboratory that is near you, every laboratory, every clinical laboratory, every commercial laboratory, every university laboratory develop. Like I know Rutgers came up with a saliva test. Right, and they got the FDA to give them an emergency use authorization, and they're trying it today, okay, in New Jersey. Right, I mean, you got people in Princeton. You think that they're not able to come up with a test? You got people at Rutgers. You got people at freaking Harvard, the Chan School for Medicine. You got people all over the place. Of course, they could come up with a test. Get those tests out the door as fast as possible. Spend money to support that effort. Let every single... Yes, we need 160 million tests. 160 million. At $1 million a day, it would take 160 days. That's easy math, right? You can see that in your head, can't you? 160 million working people, 160 million tests. $1 million a day would be 160 days. That's why we need 10 million a day, 100 million a day. Get it done.